The Eagles have made a plethora of moves. How do some of these guys fit in? We'll ask Casey Joyner. We'll start, Casey, number one, with the interesting conundrum at the, I don't want to say, maybe not conundrum, but possible battle at the quarterback position. Sam Bradford signed last week. It looked like they were committed to him. But what did that contract they gave Chase Daniels say about what could happen at training camp?
I still think that the situation is he's going to be a backup quarterback. I don't think they're looking at being the starter, but he's familiar with Peterson's system and all. And I mean, he had a good game, and he had one start in his career a couple years ago at the end of the 2013 season. He had a really good game against the Chargers, but I still don't think of this as it being a competition. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think of it as they brought him in because we want a guy who can give us a chance to win ball games in the event that Sam Bradford's hurt, and we think Daniel can play to that level. So if Bradford's out for a couple games, we get at least a chance to win those games. I think that's how they view this move.
What what skill set does Chase Daniel have that warranted I don't know if warranted is if he did warrant it, but that he got a $7 million per season deal, $35 million overall. I mean, he almost got a starting quarterback salary there.
I think maybe it's because you want to make Peterson feel comfortable more than you want to make Daniel's paycheck a very big. What skill set does he bring though? He's I don't want to call him a game manager, but he's a guy who he's got good bad decision rates in the small his history in the pros. He has much track record of him because he hasn't played that often. But when he's been out there, he's not the guy who's going to force passes in the coverage. He's a guy who takes what the defense gives him. He's going to hit a couple of big plays, but he's a guy who's going to generally play it safe. He's not going to lose the game. And remember, Peterson just got through coaching the quarterback last year, and Alex Smith, who in 2014. Or in the 2014 season, made zero bad decisions in the entire campaign. It's only the second quarterback who's had zero bad decisions in a full season in the 11 years of a track in that metric. So I think that's what Peterson's looking for. I want a quarterback who isn't going to lose me ball games. He already had that in Bradford, who's got a good bad decision rate over his whole career, and I think he gets that in the backup now in Daniel.
All right. They also made a lot of other moves. A couple other ones that stand out. Yesterday, Rodney McLeod in the secondary. They bring in a safety. Now, Thurman was decent last year. He had a pretty good year, but it seems like Jim Schwartz was a different kind of guy. So give us a little background on him and what kind of guy he'll be fitting into Jim Schwartz's defense.
Which guy we're talking about, sir?
Rodney McLeod.
Rodney McLeod. Really don't have a lot on Rodney McLeod. I haven't seen a lot of tape on him.
We got the football scientist, ESPN.com, NFL insider Casey Joyner is back with us. We appreciate him jumping back on here. Casey, I do want to ask you some quarterback questions here while we got you. We just talked a little bit about Chase Daniel. I want to get your thoughts. Look, I know all these quarterbacks get a lot of money. A lot of them get overpaid. But Brock Osweiler, forget the $72 million. Do you feel that he is a starting level, game in and game out player in the NFL? Not to mention a $72 million guy.
Brock Osweiler, no, not a top quarterback. There's nothing in his history that would suggest he's a top quarterback. Like his numbers last year, I wrote an article for ESPN's Insider Section talking about the Broncos quarterback situation and why Robert Griffin III might actually be a fantastic option for them. But that part of the article talked about Osweiler's numbers. And in Denver, his numbers, if you look last year at his total QBR on vertical passes, which are passes 11 and more yards downfield, stretch vertical passing, any of a different number of metrics, play action passes, his numbers were all terrible. You can go back to his days in college, and even in his best college season, he was posting top 30 in the out of Power 5 or FBS or FCS quarterback numbers. You're talking top 30 numbers. That's it. You're not talking a guy who's going to be a dominant player even at that level. So there's nothing in his history that would suggest that this guy's a great starting quarterback. And the only reason he got the money he got is because of the state of the quarterback situation in the NFL.
Casey, RG3 is a guy that a lot of people have question marks about. How about the Rams? Do you think that he'd be a good fit with the Rams?
Yeah, actually, I wrote two articles for this week. One talking about how he'd be a great fit for the Broncos, and the other talking about how he'd be a great fit for the Rams, because the Rams had abysmal. They have the worst quarterback play in the league, and just basically on any metric you want to go to. But He would also improve. Robert Griffin III, people think that he had a great college career and he hasn't done much in the pros other than his rookie season. And mind you, he had fantastic numbers. First, you got to look at that he's got a ceiling that other quarterbacks don't have, where when he plays well, he's not just a good quarterback or an upper half of the league quarterback, but he can be best in the league in a number of metrics. And this even goes to his 2014 season, where he played part-time with Washington. And people think, he had a terrible time, that he didn't do that well. For passers who threw over 150 passes that season, he led the league in vertical yards per attempt. He was like second vertical total QBR. So even in that season, when things are going as crazy as they were, Griffin was still putting up fantastic numbers. So even if he signed with the Rams or if he signs with the Broncos, whoever he signs with, he gives them that sort of ceiling where he can play at a level that even if he doesn't get to, say, tops in the league level, if he can give you top 15 level production for either of those teams, the Broncos or the Rams, would be a huge step up over what they had last year.
I agree with you, Casey. I think RG3 gets a bad rap. I think his rookie year, I think he was dynamic. 27 touchdowns when you combine the rushing total, just 5 interceptions, and then realistically, she probably, was not ready to play in year number 2. Even with the fact that he was injured, his numbers were okay. They were average. They weren't great, but I think he just really fell out of favor in Washington. But I think he would be an interesting guy. If you're Denver right now, is there a guy out there that you think fits best for you? Is it RG3? Is it Kaepernick? Do you call the Eagles and say, hey, we just saw you signed Chase Daniel. What about Bradford?
Bradford would be a very good fit for them. I would think that Kaepernick would be a good fit for them. I might like Kaepernick better than RG3 just from a skill set perspective because Kaepernick is bigger and he seems to be more durable, and that is the one question mark you have about Griffin. But the thing is, if you sign Griffin, you're saying you want to make a transition from what he was as a quarterback to say, okay, we're going to, because skill set-wise, he's a perfect fit for Kubiak's system. They're doing the bootlegs and all that. He'd be a great fit. And so, in fact, any of those quarterbacks would be. If I had to pick, I'd probably say Kaepernick, but Kaepernick, you're going to have to trade for him. So there's going to be the trade cost there. So if I'm Denver, if I can avoid that trade cost and get, RG3 for, the same price, but not have to pay that, anything in the trade or Philadelphia, I'm probably going that direction if I can.
Casey Joyner, ESPN.com here, NFL Insider. You can check him out at, of course, in the Insider section. Read his article about RG3. I think it's a pretty interesting thing, too, because, as you know, Washington made the trade with the Rams. Wouldn't that be poetic justice to see him land back in St. Louis with all the picks they gave up, gave away, the Redskins did to get RG3. If he ended up back in St. Louis, L.A., that would be unbelievable. But I want to ask you a couple other quickies on the free agents. What about Forte with the Jets? You think he's got a good fit, anything left in the tank? That number 30 always scares people off.
Yeah, it should, and his wear and tear. If you look at the NFL history, running backs, once they get to about the 2,000 carry mark, they fall off dramatically as far as production goes. He's there. He's shown that he can handle. He's been able to be maybe one of those guys who can produce some in his 30s. If I'm the Jets, I'm not looking to make him a workhorse, though. I'm looking to say maybe I can get 200, 250 quality carries and give the other carries to somebody else. Don't try and make him into a cow.
I want to ask you a quick question. We talked about, the Eagles and all the moves they made. Jim Schwartz is here. He went out and got a bunch of Buffalo guys, Lewis McKelvin, Ron Brooks. But Nigel Bradham, I think he really excelled in Schwartz's system. A lot of these guys didn't play well in Rex Ryan's system. So can guys like Bradham, McKelvin, not Brooks, to a lesser extent, but more Bradham and McKelvin, play better playing for Schwartz than they did playing for Rex Ryan in Buffalo?
I like Ron Brooks. I like what he brings to the table. I like we were talking earlier, by the way, about McLeod. And I do think McLeod, I have seen tape on McLeod. Like I said, just the misassigned the situation throughout. McLeod concerns me a bit from his consistency perspective. But if they put him into a defined role and say, okay, you stop the over-the-top stuff, don't worry about trying to make a bunch of other plays. You just make sure people don't hit plays over the top. I like what McLeod can bring to the table. And I think you're right that these guys – in the Rex Ryan system, Ryan is so hell-bent to get after the quarterback that he maybe asks these players to, gets these players out of position and things. And I think Schwartz is going to be, he wants to be aggressive and get after players, but I think he's going to have a more disciplined defense. You put these guys back in that kind of a disciplined defense, and I think skill set-wise, they're going to fit very well. Wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles had a much more consistent defense this year.
I'm sitting here, PT and I, we're talking about all the moves, Brandon Brooks being an offensive lineman, we know that was an area that they really struggled last year across the offensive line. And Brandon Brooks, coming from Houston over to Philadelphia, he is one of the road grading type of guards as opposed to the smallish guards they had in the Chip Kelly era.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're hoping that a guy like that, and you can go through NFL history and to see situations like this, you get one of those road graders, the guy who has who brings that type of personality, that type of that type of grit, and you put him out there, and then suddenly it imbues the rest of your line. They all take their cue from that player. His mindset becomes what they are, because the Eagles, that's part of the problem, is that they went with smallish players and with more athletic players. And I think what they'd like to do this year is have a more physical offensive line and say, we're not just trying to wear teams down athletically and wear you out because you're playing 60 plays, 60, 70, 80 plays versus, 60 for other teams. We want to make sure that if you're only playing 60 plays up there, we're beating the tar out of you and you're wore down because we're beating on you, not because you can't catch your breath.
All right, Casey, of course, more free agency. Check out Casey's article at ESPN.com in the insider section on Robert Griffin III and why he's a great fit to supplant Nick Foles in L.A. That's going to take a little while.
And our best and Mrs. Scientist, too, Casey.
Pal, we hope everything's okay over there. Thanks for jumping back.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Sorry for the trouble, and I will pass that along.
No problem. At KC Joyner, TFS.